Joining us now is News 8 political reporter Rick Albin, and he's here to help recap what we heard from Governor Gretchen Whitmer last night during her 2023 State of the State address. And obviously, Rick, a lot was talked about. Thank you for being here, by the way. A lot was talked about, and we covered it in the address beforehand on Wednesday. You and I talked about, some of the things that people could expect. Was there anything that really stuck out to you right after the address? Anything that maybe the governor mentioned or maybe didn't mention that kind of left you wondering a little bit?
Well, I think by far the most important thing that was said wasn't said. It was something that was left out of the speech. In fact, I was unsure until even after on Tuesday, the governor said she was not going to include right to work in her speech. I wanted to see a copy of the speech and hear it to be sure. And the reason that's so important is because that creates a firestorm in Lansing. If you think back to when that was first made part of the law of the land, if you will, in the state, there were riots and protests at the Capitol like we had never seen and hadn't seen again until some of the COVID demonstrations. So it was a really big deal. And if it came up again, I don't know that there would be that kind of public outcry, because there have been some ensuing changes with the Supreme Court that probably wouldn't let it be fully taken away, but it certainly could be partially rolled back. But that's not the problem. The demonstrations aren't the problem. That would poison the well for Republicans and Democrats very early on in this legislative session. I don't think that's something that she wanted. And there may have been some other reasons she didn't want to put something that controversial out there right now, given that there may be other political offices that she's eyeing down the road. And right now she wants to do what she thinks are the possible things. And so I think that's what she laid out last night.
No, absolutely. And of course, we've been hearing lots of responses from really both sides of the aisle following the end of her address last night and into today. We even heard from Senator Eric Nesbitt last night with giving the Republican response following the State of the State address. Are there other responses that maybe you've heard that maybe we haven't been seeing, or has anybody reached out to you potentially just kind of weighing in on what the governor talked about last night?
Yeah, I saw a lot of responses that hit my email box throughout the night last night, and I've talked to some folks today. Almost every State of the State, you come away with the same kind of response. If the governor is of the same party you are, you think they did a good job. If the governor is of a different party than you are, you're going to wait and see, or you'll find something that you immediately can say, I'm not on board with. And I think the response is pretty much that way. It's not that Democrats will go along with everything the governor wants. And one of the important things to remember is when we talk about what the governor wants, she laid out some really broad ideas out there. She wants to go to universal pre-K. But what does that look like? And what does it mean for parents? What does it mean for 4-year-olds? What does it mean for schools? What does it mean for space? What does it mean for staff? What does it mean for funding? None of those things are detailed in that, just that she wants pre-K for all the kids in the state of Michigan, and she wants it to be public education. She wants it to be free. But it's always about the details. So there will be some places where she'll be able to pull Democrats in with some of the detail. There'll be places where she'll pull some Republicans on board with detail, and that same detail will both drive away Republicans and Democrats at some point. So I think right now it's too hard to say. Even last night, Republicans were saying, look, she's talking about doing some type of gun bills that she says will make gun safety a priority and keep kids safe. Well, everybody's for keeping kids safe. Everybody's for making sure people handle guns properly and safely. The devil will be in the detail. How do you do that? How do you do that and not get in the way of somebody's Second Amendment right, or personal privacy, or even due process? So there are a lot of things, and I should add the Supreme Court that's weighed in saying the states can only go so far with gun laws. So there's a lot out there that we don't know. And so support or opposition right now is going to be more of a gut reaction because of your party affiliation. And down the road, some lawmakers may surprise themselves. They may have to take a stand either with or against the governor that they wouldn't expect today.
Mm-hmm. No, and of course, and we talked on Wednesday, just, it's going to be take a little bit of time to see what's going to happen. It's important to keep an eye out for what the governor decides to do following the address, and she actually held a roundtable discussion that you went to this morning. Did anything come out of that? Anything of note that we should be keeping an eye out from that roundtable discussion?
Well, the discussion itself is pretty common fare. After the State of the State address, the governor goes around the state, and I think selling her idea is a little too strong. She's been talking about these ideas for a long time. But she goes out and talks to people in the community and says, in this case, a group of seniors in Grand Rapids, and she said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. She focused on the pension tax, though it was unclear how many, if any of those folks would be affected by that rollback. But she talked about putting money in people's pockets and the kind of things that she's talked about from the time she started running for governor. And so that's kind of what governors do. They go out and talk to folks. She takes a lot of feedback. She listened to what the seniors had to say. But the one interesting thing for me that, not that that wasn't interesting, but there was, it was the same conversation that we've heard, is afterwards I got a chance to talk to her and I asked her the question, because it dawned on me that Tuesday evening, the Democratic House members had to sit and wait until one final member, the 56th member, drove back to the Capitol to cast a deciding vote. He was leaving his newborn and his wife to come back and cast that vote. And it points out how tenuous the majority is. You have to have all 56 Democrats to get something passed, unless Republicans are going to vote with you. This was a supplemental bill. The Republicans didn't know what was going to put into this supplemental. It's called, it's kind of a vehicle bill. They have to lay over for 5 days if there's an appropriation. They send the bills back and forth and get them ready to go. Then they go to appropes. They put the numbers in and send them back and try to run them kind of quickly. Republicans did it. Democrats are going to try to do it. But in this case, they had to get all their votes to get it passed. So my question to the governor was, of all of those things that you talked about last night, where do you need Republican votes? You've got 56 in the House. You got 20 in the Senate. If you can keep them all together, you can get anything you want. You can sign it anytime. And her answer was kind of surprising tonight at 5 o'clock. We're going to talk about that answer a little bit, what she had to say, and what the reality is of it, because I can tell you, keeping everybody on the same page on every vote just is not possible.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. And Rick, we do look forward to that story coming up on the News 8 at 5. Rick, we're going to let you go now. Again, thank you so much for stopping by the live desk. Really appreciate it. We really appreciated all of your coverage last night. That was a fantastic job you did down in Lansing.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks for having me on.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I want to thank everybody else for tuning into this latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Pinarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.